Ayo guys, it's your boy Vladis, and I wanted to come at you with this probably short video, hopefully short, about TTK. If you're on the virus server, it's been quite a journey that we've had in phase 2, and as of right now, there are multiple node wars happening right now, which people were forced to leave citizenship, people are forced to play on alts, or just forced to play other games, which I believe a lot of the guilds that I've hopped into are kind of in a variety of that mix. And there's been a huge discussion in the Ashes Alpha 2 general Discord where people were pinging Steven left and right about TTK, how fast TTK is. We've known this has been a thing, not just since phase 1. Phase 1 was actually way worse because of the rarity issue with everybody having complete legendary gear. But now, you know, it's a little bit more of a trying to be more of a nuanced discussion. And what are the potential solves for elongating TTK to longer than just being 2-tapped by a player? So I made here a very beautiful paint illustration to kind of go over some of my points. So here's the thing, at least from my, anecdotal experience when it comes to obtaining gear, and especially with rarity being, the static known rarity, which is also very atrocious at this point. Gear in Ashes of Creation is very, very impactful. We all know this. And really, when I play on the PTR, I can be level 25 and not being able to kill a level 8 creature. That's how powerful gear is to that point, that really there isn't any real power coming from you leveling. It's all within, of course, your gear. And of course, when you equip a new weapon or have like a stat that, or maybe a particular piece that was green that goes to heroic, you feel that. And I love that. I think a lot of people, when I get the general consensus from my guild and other guilds, people really love how equipping a new piece of gear feels. But in that sense, because everybody is searching for that static node rarity and obtaining, particular pieces to craft into heroic or higher, most people are probably in usual like uncommons and rares. That's usually what I would say the average person is equipped with, especially when it comes to like level 10 or even level 20. And then of course you have the hardcore sweats that are in rare plus, which is like rare, a mixture of rare and heroic with even maybe some legendary jewelry or even maybe an epic weapon. So how in this game can we have gear still feel impactful, but not so impactful that a person that's potentially in uncommons and rare, like a majority of uncommon with some rare items, to compare to someone who is in, all rares with a sprinkle of heroics and potentially some epics in there? Well, first of all, you don't. That's the hard reality of it all. You don't. You are at a very big disadvantage. And I think the bigger question is, I just don't want to be 2-tapped, right? So I don't mind being at a disadvantage, but how much of an advantage can I have being at a lower quality in gear? And I think, what is that? You know what I mean? As a designer, I can't imagine the nightmare they must face in trying to balance that, because and then how is that being balanced? Because if we're talking at a 1v1 level, well, this game, from Steven and a lot of the other developers have always said, this is never going to be designed at a 1v1 level. But this is something I've said, is you still have to look at a 1v level when it becomes egregious. And I think the 1v1 balancing has been very egregious. And so I think this is also going to come to a potential complete redesign in stats. And I'm talking more so to strength, intelligence, or even dexterity. I think the redesign and probably the reformulation of these particular stats, you have tanks that are completely going strength builds and are 2 to 3 tapping players, because tanks traditionally are guild leaders or people that are very high in officer ranks in guilds. So usually those tanks have very good gear. So if they go all strength instead of constitution, they're doing some really crazy damage in PvP. So how does a redesign in stats look? And how much of that is going to be allocated to PvP and not affecting PvE? Because PvE is something that I think no one's complaining about, but it mostly comes from PvP. And this is also the same argument of people asking for no delineation between PvP and PvE. You know, because I've made, I'm going to probably put this on the screen, but I actually asked Steven the question in Discord when he was asking. I said, because, you know, Zyback has set this. I believe this is a good way to test out how long people want to be able to engage in PvP skirmishes, whether it's 10 to 15 seconds, 15 to 20 seconds. Like, how long is that, you know, wanting to be done? And I said, you know, is the team willing to put like a blanket 50% power reduction for combatants in PvP? So that way, only PvP is affected. Your damage in PvE will not be affected at all. And people talked about scaling, and I mean, to me, this isn't really a scaling. This is just, I for one want to see what a complete nerf of 50% power does to PvP, and also would that give the proper time that players are looking for TTK. That's in my brain what I'm thinking of. I'm not saying that a 50% power reduction is the solve, but if we get a 50% power reduction PvP, what does that TTK look like? Are people happy with that TTK, with people being in uncommons and rares compared to rares and heroics and, you know, potentially some epics? You know, is that TTK better? Instead of being 2 or 3 tapped, potentially you have maybe 10 seconds to actually fight back, or to get away, or to actually do something other than just react in 1 second of a moment and just die. I think that, to me, is probably the biggest question. What should TTK look like? Now, I've said on my stream many times that I think the proper TTK for this game, especially when it comes to potentially a 1v1, is 15 to 20 seconds. And I remember Steven saying in an interview that he was looking for 25 to 30 seconds, and I think that's way too long. That is, in my opinion, that's probably way too long. And in my opinion, I think 15 to 20 seconds could actually be a little bit too long, but I think even having 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds could actually be more of a sweet spot. But right now, because of intellect and mages having so much power at their disposal compared to physical people like, you know, tanks and even fighters, I'm just curious as to where people are looking for in TTK. And I think, what better way than to experiment on the server? You know what I mean? And I think internally, from what, you know, Steven has said, is that they're trying probably to do more of what number 2 is, and is basically is just going to be a redesign entirely of the base stats of what strength does, of what intelligence does, what dexterity does. But that also then goes into other systems like enchanting, and enchanting being way too powerful. And it, you know, I think I've seen so many takes on what enchanting should be and how enchanting should come up. I've had my own take on enchanting. That's probably going to be a separate video. But I think when it comes to power in general, when it comes to gear, and there's also many systems that are currently not online, like socketing of jewels for gear, tempering. There's a lot of different power creeps that could potentially happen. So I think there is something at the fundamental level that needs to happen for TTK. And I think also, I just don't want gear to feel meaningless like in other MMOs, where really the main majority of my power comes from me leveling up, and gear is just very anecdotal, doesn't really change anything other than, oh, I got a new piece of gear, whoop-de-doo. And I guess for me, anecdotally, I love how gear feels. I don't want that to change, but I think it might. I think it might need to, in order for PvP to feel better. And so I'm willing to find that out, willing to experiment, but I'm really curious, guys. What do you guys think about this? What is your sweet spot for TTK? Like, what number, especially in a 1v1? I think, again, it's going to be really bonkers to balance around, you know, 5 rangers sniping all together to one tune. That's physically impossible. You're just going to die. But I think with these little skirmishes, basically, you're out in the desert, you're doing something, and someone tries to kill you, 2 taps you, and you're like, what the hell? Like, you know, so I think it's more in that line. My first question to you is, what is your optimal or your perfect TTK in a kind of 1v1 or 2v2 kind of skirmish? Like, what are you personally looking for? I would love to know down in the comment section, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care, guys.